Alright, so at this stage we are ready to create some invoices if we do not have additional complexity in our business. So let's look at how to create some simple invoices at this stage if we want. So we go into sales and this is our invoice screen. Alright, so let us see the different portions of the screen. On the top we have this header portion where we'll have some basic customer details. Then we have some basic document details on the top right, and we have some summary information on the right, and this section can be resized based upon our needs. We also see we have an item details section here which has many fields which we might not need. So the first thing that we might want to do is remove the fields that we don't need for our invoicing. So what we can do is right click and say field chooser, and we might see a lot of fields which are not required, so let us start removing them. So we have line number right now, we don't need this also. Item code, name, quantity, price, warehouse, discount. Don't need these as well. So we've removed the fields we don't need, which were irrelevant for us right now. Now if we want to resize these fields, we can do that, which means we can reduce the size for the fields according to our needs, and we can increase the size of the fields which we want should be bigger. What we can also do is change the sequence of this fields. So for example, if we want the warehouse code to be there just next to the quantity, so we can click and hold it and then drag it next to quantity, just like that. Now once we are done with how we want this to look for us, we can click on the top and say save screen settings. The right click will give us this option and we'll click this. Now this will make sure that every time we open this screen again, it will retain this setting that we have done for ourselves. Alright, so this is one part. So let us get started on invoicing. So we click on the customer code. Now first thing before we start invoicing is to make sure that we are in the add mode. By default, this opens up into the add mode, but we could use the navigation to find previous invoices or look at different invoices as well. So since we are in the add mode and we want to create a new invoice, we'll place our cursor on the customer code and we'll press tab, which gives us our list of customers. So again, we can either search and choose, and we can click and say OK, or we can double click. Now this will populate the data of this customer in our screen, which means it brings the customer code and the customer name, as well as if we go into other info, it brings us the billing and the shipping addresses. Now since we had ticked the default on the Delhi address, so it has used that address for both billing and shipping. Now if we want to change that, we can change that over here and specify which address we want to use for the billing and which address we want to use for the shipping out of the addresses that we had made for this customer. The other thing that you might want to do is put in the mode of transport, transporter name, maybe Lakshmi, some vehicle number, and if you have a GR number from the transporter, you can put it here as well. Now this is the basic info. We can again go back to item details, and this is where we'll start invoicing. So on the item code, we press tab and we'll get our list of items. So let's say we want to sell a Kids Nova cycle to our customer Gamma Automotives. Now you can see there are various options at the bottom, but we'll look at them later. So right now we'll just select an item, and the moment we do that, we'll get different information based on what we have already configured for this item. Now since we had not configured anything more than the basic info, nothing has been pre-populated for us. So we'll press tab and go and change the quantity. Let's say we are shipping 10 cycles out of, again we press tab and we'll get a list of our warehouses out of our Delhi warehouse. Now you see this whole thing works on tab. If you press tab, it will check which field you are on, and if there is a list that can be provided for you to choose from, it will be made available. In case of price, we can say that each of these cycles is $1,000, and let's say we are not giving any discount right now. Now we move on to tax code and again press tab. It opens up our list of tax combinations that we had made, and let's say we have 18% GST which has to be levied for this sale of cycles. So the moment you do that, you see your tax has been calculated and the components of the tax are shown below. So since we chose local GST 18, it applied both the components of this tax combination, and it shows the different details of how the tax was calculated and how much the tax is, and it has been applied to your line item. So likewise, you can add more items based on what you are selling. Let's say they have also ordered some kids seat to be sold as spares for the customers, and let's say we are shipping 5 of them again out of Delhi warehouse, and the price of each seat is, let's say, $150, and again we apply 18% tax. So you see, we are now ready with this invoice to be finally created. So we can check if everything is okay and according to what we need, then we can just press add, and it will give us a message that it was saved successfully, which means the invoice number 1 in this case for today's date was created successfully. Now how do we print this? Printing is pretty simple. Since we already have this invoice open, we can just click on the print button on the top. Now the moment you do that for the first time, it initializes the print engine from SAP Crystal Reports. So it might take a few seconds before it shows you the format or your actual invoice. So we see that we have our invoice ready and populated with our data that we had entered. The only thing missing is this data which comes from our configuration, initial configuration. Since we had not provided this data, it is blank over there. So the moment we provide it, it is also going to be populated over here, and we can use this invoice to print or export from here. Now if your invoice goes into multiple pages, you can use this navigation bar on the top to go into subsequent pages. What you can also do is print it from here. So if you click this button, it will give you a list of printers that are installed on your system, and you can use them to print this invoice out for you. The other thing that we can do once we are looking at this print format is export this invoice into PDF or other formats. If we click on the button on the extreme left which says export report, we'll get an option to choose from various formats in which we want to export it, and we can choose where we want this to be saved and give it a name, test invoice 1, and we'll save it. Once it's done, it will let us know, and we can go ahead and see that the invoice that we saved is available as a PDF, which can then be used to either again print or email it, or whatever is the desired objective. Now one more thing you might want to do is you might want to change the header. So if you want multiple copies, you can choose from here, let's say duplicate for the transporter, and then again look at the preview and print it again. So this heading is basically a dynamic heading and is not saved with the invoice. So you can choose which heading you want it on the invoice before you print and then print it. You can also change it according to your needs. So if you are invoicing for services and the duplicate becomes for your supplier, which is yourself, then you can change the heading and print it with the required heading for yourself. Now this is how you can create some basic simple invoices through the system.